Hello, welcome to 80 is the New 40, Aging with Purpose and Passion. My name is Mary Roque, and I have with me today Michael Wilsker, who's the Vice President and Care Coordinator for Always Best Care Senior Services based in Sudbury, Mass, and other cities, right? You're going to talk about that. And he's here to talk a little bit about home care and how this affects families, how this affects seniors, and we're going to talk about some best practices. We're going to talk about some success stories. And many of you have thought about home care, or you have thought about it for a family member. So Michael, I'm going to start from where you wanted to start, which is an important place. And I think we're going to talk about families, because usually a decision to hire home care or to take advantage of home care is a family decision. So who makes the decision, I guess, would be the first question. A lot of people out here who listen to this television show are decision makers. You know, they're independent. They want to make their own decisions. But how does it usually come about? You know, how do people usually contact you?
Well, we get contacts from various sources. Probably the two biggest are through personal referrals and through rehab centers. The discharged social worker generally will sit down with the family or as much of the family that's present and go over a plan that would be best suited for them to take care of their parent or loved one. We generally will sit down with the family, go over what their needs are, go over what their finances are, and with them determine the best plan for them. And it could be a process. Typically, the process is not initiated by the elder themselves. It's usually by the family, because the elder is the one who really doesn't think they need the help. Right. They think they can do it on their own. Right. It's seldom when we get an elder or a senior that is cooperative and understands that, gee, I do need help. Right. And that's the best type of situation that we can have. I mean, I can go into a lot of situations where it hasn't been that easy. Right. But we can talk about that later.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I think I get a lot of clients who are the daughter of an elderly person or the son of an elderly person, or maybe even the aging person themselves. And they're telling me the same story. My mother, my father, my aunt doesn't want anyone in the home. She's really stubborn about that. She's an unusually stubborn person. And I say to her, well, there's no one who wants home care. Hardly anyone does. Is that a fair statement? That if you feel that way, you're not abnormal.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. You're definitely not abnormal, because most people, as I said before, can't want to live on their own. Right. They want to stay home. Right. They don't want to go and live at the kid's house. They don't want to go live in an assisted living, independent living, nursing home. Yep. They want to age in their house. Right. That's where they're comfortable. That's where they feel that, you know, this is the place they've lived all their life. This is where they brought their children up. So that's typical of most people. I would say 95% of all seniors want to stay in the house, want to stay at home. Yeah.
So that's great. So you can help them do that, basically. That's your solution. You're the solution to them staying at home. So what are the family dynamics then? If they're not really open to it initially, the rehab calls you. Do you meet with the whole family? Or do you meet with the children alone or the loved ones alone?
Well, again, it's a process. Yeah. We'll initially get the referral from the social worker, so we'll sit down with her. She'll give us an understanding of what's going on with the family, what's going on with their parent, and we'll come up with a plan. The family dynamic can be very, very difficult in some families, because you have one child who's most familiar with the situation. They're typically the ones that we like to call that are on the ground. Right. And then you have the other siblings who are not involved, and they're probably more likely to be out of state. But then they put in their 2 cents, and they think they know much more than the other sibling that's right there. Right. So you have to get through that. Right. You've got to get, if the kids are united, I find it's very, very easy to deal with the parent. Right. But if the kids are in different areas on this, then the parent will typically go to the one they feel much more comfortable with. Right. Now, we have a situation that's going on now. We have an elderly who lives in a rehab, And the social worker has recommended that they have live-in care. That means 24 hours of in care, you know, a 7 days basis.
Right.
And this gentleman is 95 years old. And the daughter, he's got 4 kids,
Right.
3 who live in the area, and another daughter lives in Seattle.
Right.
The one in Seattle is the one who's dealing with all the issues for whatever reason.
Right.
And he trusts her more. So supposedly whatever she says, he's going to do. But unfortunately, that's not been the case. Again, he's 95 years old. He just broke his knee.
Right.
He still thinks he can go home and take care of everything.
Right.
So it's a tug of war right now as to whether or not we're going to get him home. Otherwise, he's going to have to stay in a rehab or stay in the long-term care area.
Because they won't release him.
Because they won't release him, or the family will not feel comfortable releasing him. And he's always asking when I'm going to go home, and they're just going to have to tell him every 2 weeks, you're going home next week, and then the week after that, tell him in 2 more weeks, until he finally gets it and says, okay, I understand now.
Yeah.
If I want to go home, this is what I'm going to have to do. And
yeah, so there's the issue of wanting to be left alone in your own home, and maybe not being realistic about what you can do and what you can't do. I just read a Wall Street Journal article that is really geared toward children of parents who are aging, and they say these are the things you should look for. You know, is the house being neglected? Is it not as tidy as it used to be? Do you notice memory problems, confusion, or physical unsteadiness? I mean, all these things are risks that maybe the person's neglecting himself or herself a little bit, maybe just a little bit, or neglecting, or in danger. You know, danger of falling, danger of some possible home problem. With memory problems, anything can happen, right? You could get lost. So it is humbling to have to, you know, have somebody come in and help you do these things. But I'm sure you've had some success stories where you've brought in the care and then the person doesn't realize how much better his or her life could be, right?
well, yes, absolutely, because we wouldn't be in this business if we didn't have success stories.
Right.
We've had, for instance, we have a woman who was in a nursing home, and she was well enough to go home. She wanted to go home. And she said to her kids, I don't want you to come and take care of me. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to come over and make a fuss over me. I will accept having in-home care. Mm-hmm. And it was great for her. It was great for our caregivers. They really had a good relationship, built a really nice relationship with her. Until a year later, she went back into the nursing home and then passed away. Mm-hmm. But I think her last year of living was very, very comforting.
Good.
For not only for her, but the family.
That's great.
And she developed a very, very close relationship with our caregivers. Both of them went to the funeral.
Oh, that's nice.
Both of them were very, very upset about it because they had developed a very nice relationship with her.
That's great.
So that's, I like to consider it to be a success story.
That's a good sign.
Because it's a success for both of us, for the
Right.
family and for our business.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you have the person who may ask for home care, but how do you manage, respecting the autonomy of the individual person, the elder, let's call him or her the elder, and helping the family get them home with care? So it's it sounds like you need a mediator, an outside party, or...
Well, sometimes we're put into that position and we're not comfortable being in that position because there's a conflict for us. We'd like to have the case, but at the same time we want the family to make that voluntarily and freely.
Right.
So in those kind of situations, what we'll typically do is either recommend that they get an elder law attorney to be the person who's going to take care of everything, or what they call a geriatric care manager, who is a social worker, but she or he concentrates and specializes in taking care of the elderly.
Right.
And we have a social worker on staff, but again, the social worker is just there and helping to plan, not so much to do what the overall planning for the family. We try to get them to, we try to recommend that we have, like anybody else, like you would probably have 2 or 3 in-home care companies that you would recommend to your clients. Same thing for us.
Right. Yeah, I can understand that because you can't force someone to contract with you, or to take on your business. So you need someone else on the outside. Now, elder law attorneys, they can only do so much. Can you explain to the audience what a geriatric care manager does generally?
Well, I can give you another story about that.
Okay.
My parents lived down in Florida, and my father was having falling episodes, and was in the beginning of suffering from dementia. My mother was fine, and my sister and I are both up here, and we would rotate going down every other month to check up and see if my mother was okay, because she was the one who was taking care of my father. Till we got to the point where I recommended, and I sat down with my sister and said, we've got to get somebody down on the ground who's going to be there for them, seeing them when necessary. And so we talked about it, and we came up with getting a geriatric care manager down for them in Florida. And when we first talked to my parents about it, they were, we're fine, we can take care of ourselves. But because my sister and I were very united in our decision, they said, okay, we'll consider it, we'll talk to the people that you recommend, blah, blah, blah. Got to the point where my mother did agree. We did get them in touch with somebody, and to this day she calls him like her second son. And not only has she given comfort to my parents, but she's given comfort to my sister and I. When my father was ailing and then eventually passed away, he was there every step of the way.
That's great.
And now that he's passed away, he's been there for my mother, and my mother's 83. There's continuity, and again, that's what they do. That's what their job is for a geriatric care manager, to give you some form of comfort, knowing that, and if they go to you, they go to the doctors with you, they advocate for you.
Great.
They'll get an attorney if you need an attorney. They'll set up in-home care for you if that's necessary. They'll even, this is a situation with my mother now where she's having memory problems. The geriatric care manager is not very comfortable with the neurologist she's been seeing, so he's now having her go to another one just to get a second opinion and have them do more than the other doctor has done it to this point.
So they can do the medical advocacy, they can recommend home care agencies, they can be the home.
Right. This geriatric care manager is a nurse.
Okay.
Also has social work background.
Okay.
So he's got the whole thing.
Package.
So,
That's
the
great.
whole package.
Yeah, I think that's a very helpful piece. That I don't know if your agency does that. Does your agency also go to? Does they go to medical appointments with people?
No, we'll go and accompany them, but we won't advocate for them. So the caregiver will accompany them.
Okay.
But typically, they will not.
They won't intervene.
They won't intervene because they're not trained to do that. They're not trained to give medical advice.
Great. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That's sometimes probably a concern of an elderly person or their family member. How do I know this person who's coming into my home is trustworthy, well-trained, somebody I'm going to get along with, all of that? I mean, how do you assess that when you make a decision, I'm going to send this person to, Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones or...
Well, first of all, we try to get the understanding of what the case is. And then based on how the case is going to be, we would try to match up a caregiver to be best suited for that so that everybody's comfortable, including especially the elder who she's going to be caring for. The caregivers that we bring in are, that we do a thorough background check. They're insured, they're bonded, we have workers' compensation. We like to think that we attract the best caregivers out there because we happen to pay more. So you get what you pay for, I guess. It's what most agencies will look at. They're trained, they come in trained. We also make sure that they're updated with their training. There are two types of caregivers. There's the companion. They'll be more suited to doing light housekeeping, meal preparation, transportation, just companionship. But they can't do toiletry or showering or anything that's hands-on. And in that case, we'll bring in what we call a CNA, which is a certified nursing assistant. They're trained to provide that kind of care. And so, again, we try to bring in the best person for that situation. And if they don't work out, which sometimes happens, whether it be the elder who's not happy or the family's not happy, we'll bring in another one.
Right.
And we'll keep being diligent to make sure that we get the best caregiver in there to help the family.
Great. Well, it sounds like you've had some success stories. Now, that's always a little mysterious to me because I think it's an important an important part of a good caregiver agency, a good home care agency, is training your people. Now, I know that there are best practices in the world of, certified nurses. How about home care companionship? I mean, how do you train someone to do that? Are there objective criteria?
Well, again, if I had some kind of experience at providing care for elders, whether it be volunteering at a nursing home, volunteering at the senior center, just having a general background dealing with elderly people. It could be anything.
Right.
It could be working in a dance studio where elders come in and dance.
Right.
It could be working at a gym.
Right.
So they have familiarity with them. They know they want to be there. They want to be there to accompany them because what I've found with most elders, or all elders, is they want to feel special. They want to have somebody who's interested. They want to feel like somebody's interested in them.
Right.
And that's the kind of person we try to bring in from both ends, whether it be a companion or a certified nursing assistant. But we've had people go into nursing homes just to sit with the elder at the nursing home, be a companion, talk to them, make them feel important, accompany them around the facility. I mean, we have a woman that goes in to help another woman at a assisted living.
Right.
She takes her on trips. She helps her with meals. That's typically what a companion will do.
Yeah, so you're talking about people with good interpersonal skills.
Exactly.
Someone who's generous, who knows how to serve, and
but also, I mean, there's people that have those abilities, but
particularly to elderly.
Particularly elderly, because that's the specialty in itself.
Right. Being conscious of the fact that the person has limits, or at least, as you say, they want to be special. I think we all want to be special, treated specially, Michael.
But
not just the elderly. Although you and I were talking, we're getting older.
Right. But when you go, what I find though, Mary, is when you go into a nursing home, a lot of these seniors are isolated.
I see what you mean.
They're not part of a group. It's very cliquey in a lot of these
even
places.
assisted living.
Even assisted living, even in nursing homes.
Right.
So this will give them an extra layer of somebody who's there to sit down with them and make them feel important.
I see what you mean.
Because if you go in a nursing home, you see a lot of people just sitting in wheelchairs, staying in bed.
Right.
There's nobody for them to talk to.
That's true.
And I think they really, the family is the one who really initiates it.
We're going to send a companion.
We're going to send somebody over to talk to you and be there for you, befriend you, and they usually, sure, that's great.
Yeah, that's true. I talk to people about setting up trusts when they go into a nursing home, and that trust is available. It could be, their last $20,000, and they have to spend down sometimes in order to be eligible for Medicaid. And I say, put $20,000 or 30 or 40 aside, so that your mother, your father will be able to pay for home care. If you go away on vacation, or if you can't be there 8 hours a day, you don't want them to be alone.
Right.
It's something people don't think about. It's a good planning issue as well. Okay, that's great. So you're saying that it's possible to have home care, quote unquote, at a nursing home or at an assisted living facility or at a rehab, right?
Right.
Even if you're 2 weeks in a rehab, you can send somebody.
Right. In fact, we have a client now who's in a hospice, and they have extra care for her.
Well, that's another important time of life.
Right.
End of life.
But these are people that have a lot of money.
Right.
Because in a hospice or even a nursing home, they have care.
Right.
But people that have a lot of money will bring in their own care just to supplement that.
Right.
People who live in, I'm sure you're familiar with the term of aging in place. Mm-hmm. There are some communities that have have an independent living, have an assisted living, and then have rehab and long-term care.
Right.
So what will happen is the independent living people will, when they're not well enough, they figure they can't take care of themselves as well as they used to. They'll either bring in their own home care person so they can stay in the independent care, or they'll then move into the assisted living.
Right.
And once in their assisted living,
it's only so much
it's
care
only so
they
much
get.
time, but again, if they can afford to have their own home care people, they'll hire us to go in there and do that. And then once they're not good enough, they're not well enough to stay in the assisted living, then they'll go into the long-term care.
But at each stage, you could be available, or you're an agency like yours.
Right.
Well, that's great to know. And I mean, you say a lot of money. I think, again, as an attorney who's looking at people's money all the time, and there's all sorts of planning techniques where you can plan for the future. And sometimes people gift away a lot of money to their daughter or son or grandkids. And I always encourage them to set up a trust so that there's money available to take care of themselves. So a lot of money, it depends on how long you live, right? I mean, your average, I'm just going to guess, you don't have to, you can nod. The average cost of a home care person is about $25 an hour?
Yes.
Okay. So $25 an hour times, say, 4 hours a day, it's $100 a day. So $100 times 7. So $700 a week for a lot of comfort and support.
Right.
And it could go on, it could go up from there.
Oh, absolutely.
You could have 24 hours or more. Okay. So anything else you want to talk about? Is there any way to utilize the home care services that can be reimbursed through, for example, veterans benefits? Or I know Medicaid or Medicare doesn't pay for your services, right?
Right. There is a program called Aid in Attendance through the VA.
Right.
And any veteran that's participated in or served during a war is eligible. They don't have to have been in the battle. They wouldn't have had to be active within front lines. They could have been a cook in the back of behind the lines.
But during combat.
But during the time of war. That would be Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, World War II, World War I, Korea.
Vietnam,
and so would their spouse be eligible for the benefits.
Right.
And it's a process to apply for it. Typically, there are attorneys that just specialize in preparing those applications.
Or actually, there are veteran agents, there are veterans agent, what do they call them? Veteran service agent officers in each town.
Right.
We have a great one here in Medfield. Ron Griffin, he's available at the Medfield Council on Aging once a week. And he helps people with that first process.
Right.
I think lawyers tend to help, and maybe they will help do that initial application. They certainly know how it works.
Right.
But they also help if they're denied. They'll help them appeal because oftentimes they can't prove their case on the first go around. So they need more medical.
Pretty much like Medicaid.
Yes, it can happen like Medicaid, although Medicaid's a little more burdensome, I would say, in some ways. But often they just need a doctor to be able to say that they really need, or they connect basically their injury or their disability. I'm talking about a different type of benefit now because you talked about aid and attendance. Aid and attendance pays you directly, or is that a cash benefit for them? For them they have to have the need for it, so it would go to the veteran and then pay us. They
and
pay
they'd
you.
have to prove that they're paying us.
So in other words, I see. Okay,
They
so you have
couldn't just
to
put it in their pocket.
I
They'd have to
see.
use it specifically for the care.
For the care.
Pretty much like, it's a benefit like long-term care insurance.
It's a fixed amount.
It's a fixed amount, but
per month.
the person who gets reimbursed is the family, and then the family pays us.
I see. But there's a little more income coming in.
Right, from the long-term care insurance, absolutely.
No, or even from the veterans benefit. That veterans benefit would
Let's
let them be able to
supplement
pay that $700 a week.
Right.
But there are other types of veterans benefits that if someone's been injured in a war, there's a compensation for that injury, but there has to be a proven injury. With aid and attendance, it's just a matter of having been in the war.
Right.
Now you're disabled, no matter how you're disabled.
Right.
You may have cancer that's not related to the war.
Right.
But
Exactly.
yeah, so that's interesting. But as of now, Medicare doesn't pay for home care unless you're a VNA.
Well, they'll pay for
agency.
VNA, but VNA is only there 2 or 3 hours, and they're not there to do the all day caring. They're just there to administer whatever medical attention is necessary at that time.
Right, they're not going to be a companion.
Right, they're not going to clean up the house, they're not going to provide meals, they're not going to help them go to the toilet, they're not going to help them shower.
Some people misunderstand that. I think that's a big misconception that many people have, is that, I'm going to be in the rehab for a while, then I'm going to go home with VNA. But the VNA, we all know, doesn't really give you the care you need so that you can stay at home safely for a long period of time. They'll just make that visit.
Right. The same thing would apply to hospice.
Right.
If you're living at home, Hospice will come in 2 or 3 hours a day, but again, they will not help with the chores. They will just be there to comfort you and provide you with meds to make it
Right.
easier for them to deal with the illness.
Right. They'll give you they may be a volunteer who will sit
Right.
with you.
Right.
But there's no sort of hard medical care or quasi-medical care.
Right.
So the agency is really the only way to go. Or a home care, I mean, either you're in a nursing home or you have an agency come. Or,
Right.
or an individual person you
Or an
hire.
individual person, or, I mean,
Or a family member.
A family member. There's also individual private care people
Right.
that, they can get as a referral. They can go online, people that advertise online that
Right.
they're
willing to sit.
caregivers.
Right.
Now, the downside of that is there's no background check.
Right.
There's no, you have to
Bond.
get your own workman's compensation for them. You'd have to file the taxes.
Yeah.
There's no protection against whether they're thieves or not. And if there's no background check, you don't know what their background is.
Right. And there's no backup. If they don't show up,
Exactly.
you're going to help get the next person.
Exactly.
On a day like today, we're in the middle of
Right.
the aftermath of a blizzard.
Right.
I'm sure it's hard to get care on these
Yes,
kinds of days.
very much so.
So you can help with that. Okay. Yeah, again, that's a misconception a lot of people have. They're in my practice, I see a parent or a daughter or son sees their aging parent not able to stay at home or needing care, and they think one of their insurance policies will cover either Medicare, their supplementary Blue Cross, their something, veterans, and it just isn't there. So we have this crisis, in a sense, as a society, that we have this aging population moving towards the 60s and the 70s, 80s, and there's really no safety net unless they go to Medicaid. Now, there is a program through Medicaid that's an at-home program.
Right.
Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of it.
Okay, so it's not 24 hours in most communities, but Medicaid, if you are eligible for Medicaid, you can apply for what's called the Frail Elder Program. And the Frail Elder Program is administered through the area agencies on aging, and they will hire certain agencies to come and be a companion for maybe, if you're lucky, 6 or 7 hours a day, but not overnight. They'll do all those things that you do, but it's not the same as being in a nursing home in most places. So, you spoke about your fees. Let's see. What do you think separates your agency from other agencies? Just in terms of like when the family is out there, the geriatric care manager's been hired, how do you sell yourself to them?
Well, I like to think they like me just because I'm very
Your
personable.
personality?
My mother thinks I'm.
Okay.
What differentiates us is a number of things. We have a social worker on staff, as I mentioned before, which most agencies don't. So that social worker will know how to speak, speak in the terms that a social worker at a rehab would, so they understand what's going on better. We also provide a service that no other agency provides, which is free, independent, assisted living placement. So if we get a family that is not looking to have their parents stay at home, but wants to move into an assisted living or an independent living community, we'll act as their advocate. We'll sit down with them, go over what their needs are, what their finances are. We'll then fit that into some of the assisted or independent living places that will best serve those two categories. And we'll meet with the marketing admissions person there to tell them what the situation is. And then if they pass that situation, if they pass that with talking to the person at the assisted living community, then we'll accompany them on their tours. And so that's all free. They will not have to pay for that, pretty much like a real estate agent.
Or a daughter or son who has to shop around for a different...
The difference is we know the different assisted living places
in the areas.
In the area, which is, and we can zero that down, we can narrow it down because there are a lot.
Right.
And we're not wasting anybody's time.
Right.
So when we accompany the family on a tour, and if they really love the place, they're not going to come back and say, I really love the place, and say, gee, how much does it cost? And we're going to say $6,000, and we know they can only afford $4,000.
Right.
We're not wasting their time by having them go through there. We're not wasting the community's time.
Right.
We have somebody who's a bona fide applicant that if they like it, they're ready to go.
Right.
They have the money, they have the need.
Oh, that's a great service.
So it can be very overwhelming for a family to find an assisted living place. And we will get paid by the facility for placing them. And even if the facility doesn't pay us, we'll still try to place them there because it's goodwill for the facility, for the community. It's also goodwill for the people that we're acting on.
Yeah, and you get your name out there.
Right, exactly.
As a referral.
Right.
Okay, so we didn't touch on this too much. I don't know how much time we have left, but memory care. This is a growing issue. People with Alzheimer's and memory loss of the different types of dementia. Do you provide services for that?
Yes, we do.
Is it a specialized service that you have for people with memory care?
No, most CNAs are qualified to take care of Alzheimer's. They come in pretty much two categories. You have the person who suffers from Alzheimer's who's physically fine, but it's just having memory problems because of Alzheimer's. And then you have the individual that has medical problems. And that's the more of a challenging one, because you have to do two things at the same time. You have to help them because of their memory, but you also have to help them physically. So
there's a certain type of training for CNAs for people with memory care.
Right.
So is there a particular type of interactive socializing that you do, the CNA does, with the memory loss patient?
I don't know if they do anything specific, but they make sure that everything is taken care of properly, that the elder understands as best they can of what's going on. They'll give them reminders.
Cueing, orienting.
Exactly. Right, that's the term, cueing.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I've seen in different places where, because the person's mental condition is diminished, so they need almost to be treated. It's a kind of a hard balance. You treat them as a person who doesn't have memory, but they're adults who have certain, they may have long-term memories, but not short-term. So it seems like a challenge. I know clients of mine are challenged to keep that person oriented, to keep them stimulated. And then certain times of the day are worse than other times of the day.
I don't know how much time we have. I just wanted to add something.
Yeah.
The population that is growing as far as Alzheimer's patients are concerned, people that are suffering from Alzheimer's, to the extent that a lot of communities now are building separate communities just to house and take care of people who are suffering from Alzheimer's, which has never been that way. So now they have independent living, assisted living, long-term care, and Alzheimer's.
Assisted or nursing?
Just completely,
just
memory challenged people.
Wow.
So they're building them. That's where most of the money is going right now, into building those communities.
New facilities.
Right.
That's interesting. That's good to know. Well, I think we covered a big, broad spectrum. I think maybe the audience would like to know. I'm assuming many of the people who are watching are older themselves. So, what would you say would be a good sort of short-term plan if you see yourself, okay, I have my house that I've been living in for 40 years, I'm in my 80s, I've been independent this long, but how do I prepare myself for these next 10 years? Maybe I'm just going to drop dead, maybe I'm going to have live to be 95 or 100, but what would you say would be a good preparation, in a sense, to have home care come in? Like, how would you, first of all, assess it, and then be reflective about your own situation?
Well, before we even get there, people usually don't plan ahead.
Yes.
I've found that. I've done seminars and people just don't want to deal with it.
Right.
So it's a crisis that determines what's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, the situation that happened with my sister and I is a rarity. It's not the rule.
Right.
And we try to educate people that they should plan. And again, you're dealing with the senior parents who believe that they're never going to have any problems, that they're going to die in their sleep.
Right.
And we know that's not the case. So it's really a family member. It's the kids that are going to have to get involved as early as possible. Sit down with their folks and say, Dad, Mom, look, there's no problems now, but there will be eventually. There will be something. Dad may be, you may fall, break a hip, go into a hospital, go into rehab. We've got to make, arrangements. What are we going to do? Because if you come out in that situation, it's going to be a crisis. We're going to have to run around trying to figure out what the best thing to do. So maybe we should come up with a plan. Just like you have a plan in your house if there's a fire. you go over like they do in school. You go through a rehearsal.
Sure.
That's what you should do. And I think as the population is increasing with the elderly, that maybe families are going to start to understand that that's the way they're going to have to go.
Right, and what I say to my clients is, look, right now, you've never had any help at home. You've managed your home as a couple. You've done all the repairs. You've done all the cleaning and cooking. But you're older now, so maybe the first step would be just to have somebody do the maintenance of the lawn and the cleaning at home. And then you get used to that sort of help, and you see how much your energy levels can be, your energy that you have can be used for other things. So I would say, you have more experience than I do, but that seems to work relatively well, that if they invite people to come into their house for certain things,
Right.
once a week come clean, once a month do the maintenance, that can be a good intro to, it's not so bad having someone come and help me.
Right.
I can have a better quality of life. Okay, well, thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate you coming. Again, this is Michael Wilsker from Always Best Care Senior Services in Sudbury, Wayland, and
Westboro.
Westboro. And we appreciate you coming and wish you well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.